So, here is my review for The Goldfinch. I'm honestly so glad I finished this book. So, standard layout, I'm going to give 3 pros, 3 cons of the book, and then at the end I'm going to have a bit of a discussion regarding the spoilers. I will put the discussion at the end so that if you want to read the book and you don't want it spoiled for you, you don't have to watch. So, as usual, I'm going to start with a con of the book, and it's probably the biggest con of the book. The writing was just over descriptive. It was honestly so descriptive. Now, at the start of the book, the over descriptive writing was good. It was great because that's what we needed. We needed the world building. We needed to know where it was set. We needed to know about these characters. And then when you got to about halfway and it was just continuing, like the author spent about a page and a half telling us what a person looks like. I'm like, I don't really care what the person looks like. I'm just going to make it up in my head what they look like anyway. And it was just unnecessary sometimes. I felt as though the writing style became drawn out, especially in the second half of the book, because it became a little more action-packed. It wasn't more about the world building. It was still there. All of it was still there. And you're like, well, we can't have action and description, because all of that together, it's just going to say, this really happened, but let me tell you all about this first. Then this really happened, but let me tell you about this bit. And like, oh, it was difficult. The over-descriptive writing got difficult probably around halfway. Yeah, I'm going to stay with halfway. Because before that, it was good. I really enjoyed it. It was needed. It was necessary. And then it just wasn't. And it was still there. And I feel as though the author put so much work into it. I don't really like bashing that there's description, because obviously it's there for a reason. You've put description in this book because you want us to know things, and that is great, and I'm so glad, but sometimes it was just a bit much, wasn't it, really? Honestly, it was. So, my first pro of the book are characters. The people who cared about Theo. The Babor family, who, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm just going to pronounce them as Barbors, because it's not Barber. I know it's not that, because they're a very wealthy, posh family, and you wouldn't have a Welsh. You wouldn't have a wealthy, posh family called Barbers, would you? So, I'm going to pronounce it as the Barbors. And Barbour? Barbor. It's Barbor. Anyway, the Barbor family, they were lovely. Mrs. Barbor, I expected to hate her so much. I thought, oh, snooty rich cow. I'm not going to like her at all. And she was the most kind and caring woman. She was so lovely to him. Like, when Theo first went and said, I haven't really spoken to them in ages, and the place was like this, and the family was like this, and I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this family. And I loved Mrs. Barbour so much. I loved all of them, to be honest. But I love Mrs. Barbour. She was such a caring woman and a kind woman, and she appears a bit later on. Theo kind of never forgets about her, and it means so much to me that that relationship's still strong, because she was a mother to him after his mother died. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then throughout the book, there were other characters. Hobie, who was like a father to him. Hobie is such an amazing character. They just kind of met on an off chance, really, and I'm so glad that they did. And it was it was just perfect. It was perfect relationships. They did so... Donna Tartt did so well in creating these relationships, because the relationships between the Barbors and Hobie and Pippa and Boris, all in relation to Theo, honestly, they couldn't be faulted. Now, no, all of them. The relationships that were meant to be strong were strong, and there is no denying that. Okay, my second con, and it's one that I'm going to really struggle to talk about because near the end it's a spoiler, and I'm not going to spoil it. So I'm going to have to really word this in a way that doesn't spoil it. I felt as though the ending, or the last section of the book, came from nowhere. Honestly, there was nothing that suggested that. There was nothing that suggested how it was going to play out or that it was even potentially going to play out. And then it was just like, oh, yeah, this is happening, by the way. And you're like, what? Since when? Where did that come from? Like, I don't even know where I stand with it. I think I was disappointed with it. I mean, I was glad, in a way, because it brought certain characters, it brought memories back into the book, and I was glad. But at the same time, I felt as though it just came from nowhere. So why? Why would you come from nowhere? Why would you do that? Why? Like, there was no setup. And then I feel as though that was just the ending that was so planned originally, that she made things happen earlier in the book, and I thought, at the start, I didn't know why it happened in the book. I didn't know what this section was about. I didn't actually enjoy the section very much, and then I loved the section. It was very complicated for me. I hated the section, then I loved it. It was just very dependent on how I felt at the time. And then that section happened, and then they moved on, and I was like, okay, fair enough. It's about his life, it's following him through his life. And then they went back to that section by doing this end. And I'm like, why? Why? That was perfect the way it was. And now it just makes it seem as though you've written the ending first and then said, I need to make it fit. So you've gone back. And it ruined the first portion of it for me. Because I just think the ending came from nowhere, and it feels like the portion that I loved was only there to suit that ending. And I didn't like that ending. So it's very tricky. I don't get it. I'm not a fan. I'm really not a fan. Okay, so my second pro. Yeah, that is right. My second pro is the relationship between Theo and a character called Boris. Now, I won't again go into too much detail. Saying that, there's no spoilers with their relationship and their friendship. They become best friends. Eventually, something happens. Theo's life progresses. He meets Boris. Now, Boris, probably not the best influence for him. Boris does drugs and drinks and smokes. He's very young at this point. They're still young. They're still teenagers, about 15, something like that. And Boris, probably not the person Theo needs in his life, but their relationship was so strong and it bonded so much. And their relationship came in a part of the book where I wasn't enjoying myself. It was probably getting to like a halfway point through the book, and I wasn't enjoying the writing style. I was starting to get a bit bored of the description. I just wasn't liking where the book was at, to be honest. It really upset me. I was a bit disappointed. And then this happened, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'd like to see where this goes. I'd like to see where this friendship leads. And, you know, I still agree that Boris is probably not the best influence on Theo, but their friendship was unmatched, and it was so different and creative, and yeah, it was very different because Boris is not a person that we've ever seen Theo associate with before. It's very different to the life he had before his mother died. And there was just so much there. I'm really trying to do all this without spoiling anything, but it was such a close friendship, and I loved it. I did. I really loved that bit. So, my final con, and again, it's towards the end of the book, because the end of the book I didn't really like that much, but it was the last chapter. So, definitely trying to avoid spoilers. I felt as though the author just kind of wrote it in a way that, yes, this philosophical lesson now. And I'm like, what? I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I wasn't best pleased with how some things played out in the book. At the end, I just felt like things happened, and I was a bit like, oh, well, that amounted to nothing. But there were other things, and I was like, well, yeah, there was no other way that could have ended. That was correct. That was appropriate. And then there was just a big spiel about I've written my story this way because of this, and I hope you understand this emotion and then this. And I was like, you've not. I don't know where I'm at with it. Just, really didn't enjoy the ending. I felt as though it was a bit anticlimactic. I mean, it's a book following someone through their life. I didn't expect it to be extremely thrilling, but I expected a bit more of a satisfying ending, or a bittersweet ending, or an ending where it was like, oh well, we'll see where this goes. And it was just no, nothing like that. So yeah, I weren't a big fan of that. So before I carry on and tell you my last pro, I just want to apologise for how undescriptive my cons have been so far. But I did take issue. I've said it. I take issue with the ending of the book. So a lot of my cons come to that ending, and I don't want to spoil anything for you. So I've just tried talking about it in a non-spoilery fashion, which is very difficult because it means that I can't really talk about much. So I am sorry for that, and hopefully you still enjoy this. So my last pro of the book, and it is probably one of my favourite things. Very start of the book, there was a terrorist attack. It was made very clear that was going to happen, and how that was written was just so well done. Again, it leads from the fact that I said my con was the fact that it was overly descriptive, but at the start of the book it was necessary, and it really was. It was so necessary to have that description, and the description of the attack, the description of the people, the description of how it affected Theo, and the description of everything to do with that attack was just so well done. And I was happy to read 3 or 4 pages on this attack. Just not necessarily on the attack, just on the description of the devastation it caused, because that was what we needed at the time, and it was just so well done, and I loved it so much. I honestly could not big up the start of this book enough. The first half of this book was phenomenal. Second half just let down, in my opinion. You might not think so. Hopefully some of you will read the book and I will get to hear what you thought about it. But yes, the start of the book, the terrorist attack, the description of him meeting Pippa for the first time, the description of him and his mother, the description of how he got out, the description of meeting Welty. You cannot fault it. Well, I couldn't. I could not fault it. I really couldn't. It stuck with me and I loved it. The description was so perfect at the start. Yeah, it was. So that is all from me. They are my 3 pros and 3 cons. Again, I'm sorry, a lot of it was spoiler based, so I tried to avoid them so much, so it may not have made this a great review. And I feel as though everyone really deserved a great review after how long I've been talking about this book. I'm sorry, guys. But yes, that is it. So now I'm going to talk about some of the spoilers, some of the things that stuck with me that can be considered spoilers. Some parts of the book that not necessarily spoilers, but I don't want to ruin it for you, so I'm not going to mention it in this section. So if you are interested in reading the book, or you don't really care about listening to the spoiler bits, stop now, because everything after this will just be spoiler based. Okay, now, honestly, I have so much I need to talk about this. I just don't know. There were parts of this book. Now, the first thing, I need to talk about it, and it's the ending. Not the last chapter, as I said, was one of my cons, but the part where I said it just came out of nowhere. All of that shootout, the thing with Boris and going to Amsterdam, and where the hell did that come from? Honestly, where did that come from? Honestly, I'm never going to get over that. I felt as though this book was leading in so many good places. It was following him through his life. And then at the end, the author just maybe looked at it and was like, this might be a bit boring. Let's throw in a shootout in Amsterdam for no good reason. Like, why? We've spent so long discussing Theo having this painting and it meaning so much to him. And the fact that he kept it wrapped up in paper, in a bag, or in a pillowcase, or wherever he kept it, wrapped up, and didn't even bother to unwrap it and look at it since he freaking nicked it. So much so that when he was a 15-year-old child, Boris found it and took it. What? Really? That's where we're at. The fact that not once, despite it meaning so much to him, despite him loving this painting so much, I get that he was scared that he was going to get found out, because you will go to prison because he stole a art piece. He stole something from a museum and he would go to jail. Yeah, fair enough. I get it. But what I don't like is the fact that 15-year-olds don't think like that. I'm in my 20s, I don't think like that. If I had something, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to look at that. And he never did. From the day that he stole the painting, or from, I don't know, from the point where he was, I'd say from the age of 14. Like I said, 8 years has passed and then time had passed, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say he was roughly around my age, around 24. Really? From the age of 14 to 24, let's say roughly between 10 and 12 years. Between 10 and 12 years, you never once opened that painting. Really, lad. Really. And if he had opened that painting at any point in his life, he would have seen that it was not actually the painting. And then all of that happened. I'm like, well, why? I just don't get it. I don't get it. It angered me. It was leading so much throughout his life. It was telling us his life, and he just kept this painting on because it reminded him of his mother, and that was perfect. I loved it. I loved the fact that he did that, and I understand why he was so scared, and I wanted just a natural realization that he had to let his mother go, and then that's how he got rid of the painting, and the painting ended up in a museum, and he was like, oh, well, my mother deserved to be in a museum. This monument here forever will always remind me of her. That is how the book should have ended. That would have been perfect. But no, Boris had to steal it. They had to go to Amsterdam. They ended up in a shootout. Boris got shot, and Boris didn't die, which I'm glad because I like Boris. But still, the whole shootout thing, it was just put in for a bit of action at the end, and I just don't think it was necessary. It would have been perfect had it ended the way I've just said. I really need to complain. I should have written that book. Do you prefer my ending or the original? Let me know. So, the second thing I want to discuss, because again, I just feel as though it was just badly done. I mean, I get it, but badly done. And it was Andy. Andy Barbeau. One of Theo's best friends when he was young. Part of the family that took him in after his mother died. And then it just skips 8 years. That time jump, the 8-year time jump. It killed the book, that time jump, it really did. But the 8-year time jump, and then he runs into Platt, who was a dick. He was a dick when it was younger, and then now all of a sudden he's a reformed character and he's great. Like, oh, great, well done. But then, oh yeah, oh, you didn't know? Yeah, Andy died. Oh. No, I didn't know that. And then they told us, and it just happened, and then it was very sad. And then it was just kind of like, all right. Like, Theo didn't really have much of a reaction. That was his best friend when he was a kid. Yeah, they hadn't seen each other in years, but he was his best friend. He lived with him after his mother died. That kind of friendship, he should have had more of a reaction. And then throughout the book, he just ends up getting more annoyed that Kitsy, Andy's sister, is not grieving as much as he was, but he isn't showing any sign of grieving. The things I don't like about this book... The things I don't like about this book really anger me, so that's why I'm really like, honestly. And then the last thing, I just think it's a bit of a fun thing, I wanted to end on something positive and fun, is how the hell is Pop Chick still alive? Honestly. That dog has been through a 12-year time jump that we were a part of. It was an 8-year time jump, and then like 4 years roughly at some point existed. Probably more, probably about 15 to be honest. I didn't really pay that much attention to the time jumps. I got bored by the end. But how old was this dog when we first met him? If he can survive somewhere between 12 and 15 years, and not be dead? Was he just a puppy when we first met him? Because it was never said that he was a puppy. It was said he was a dog, and that Sandra had had him for a while. It was never said he was a puppy. So unless this dog's 20 and got an abnormally long lifespan... Bad writing, Miss Tart. Bad writing. I'm not going to criticise the writing. The writing was phenomenal at the start. It just took a bit of a dip at the end. But maybe Popchick was just kept alive because no one wants to kill a dog. I love Popchick. So thank you so much for listening to my rants. I'm very sorry that you had to put up with them rants. That's pretty much it from me, to be honest. I post every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday, and then randomly when I have the need to talk about something. So that is all from me. So tune in next time. Make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell so you're always notified on when I post. And yeah, honestly, please feel free to comment in this section. I want to get so many comments. Whether you, even if you didn't like it, just comment. We'll have a chat. If you have read the book, I really want you to comment. I want to hear your thoughts. If you haven't read the book and you want to read it, tell me why. Tell me, get me excited about it. If you don't want to read it, tell me why. You've heard me talk about this book now for getting on for 4 weeks. Like, it's been such a big part of my year, and I'm so glad it's over, but at the same time, I'm quite sad because I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But anyway, that's by the by. See you later, guys.